"Dad, we're on the plane. You're not coming." My son's voice stabbed through the phone, icy as the Halifax winter, shredding my heart like shrapnel from my Afghanistan days. My daughter-in-law's venomous cackle followed. "No more dragging us down, old soldier." Every dollar from my veterans' pension bled for their dream vacation mocked me as I stood alone in the airport, my scarred hands crushing the tickets. Betrayed. Discarded. My soul screamed in agony, a wound deeper than any battlefield cut. They thought they'd broken me. They'll regret crossing this, old soldier. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from, whether it's somewhere beautiful in Canada or anywhere else in this amazing world. The Halifax Stanfield International Airport buzzed with chaos, a hive of hurried footsteps and muffled announcements echoing through the cavernous terminal. The bitter February wind seeped through the glass doors, carrying the briny tang of the Atlantic, stinging my face as I stood frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear. My son's words, "Dad, we're on the plane. You're not coming," and Sophie's venomous cackle looped in my skull, each syllable a fresh wound. My old army duffel, scuffed from decades of service, slumped at my feet, heavy with the weight of betrayal. I'm William Fraser, a 62-year-old veteran, my knees creaking from shrapnel scars earned in Afghanistan. For 35 years, I poured my heart into Nathan, my only son, believing he'd carry my pride. I paid for his Dalhousie tuition, his first car, even this Prince Edward Island getaway, every loonie from my pension, scraped together for a family I thought still existed. Nathan and Sophie, though, saw me as a relic, a broken rifle to be shelved. They lived rent-free in my Dartmouth home, a weathered bungalow I'd built with calloused hands, yet Sophie sneered at its dated walls, her voice dripping with disdain. "It's like a bloody barracks," she'd said last Christmas, sipping wine I'd bought. Nathan barely looked up from his phone, his silence louder than her barbs. Now, stranded in the terminal, my chest burned with a rage I hadn't felt since Kandahar. I scanned the crowd, businessmen, families, none with Nathan's lanky frame or Sophie's smug stride. My fingers twitched, itching to crush the tickets. "You gave too much, mate," I muttered, echoing a fallen comrade's words. They'd learn what it meant to cross me. The Halifax airport's hum faded as I dragged my duffel through the terminal, the sting of Nathan's betrayal searing my chest like a fresh burn. My boots thudded on the polished floor, each step heavy with the weight of a life poured into a son who'd just hung me out to dry. The briny Atlantic air clung to my jacket as I pushed through the glass doors, the February chill biting my knuckles. I'd spent 35 years building Nathan up every loonie from my veteran's pension, went to his Dalhousie tuition, his shiny pickup truck, even the Prince Edward Island trip I'd planned for us all. $5,000. Gone. For a family vacation I wasn't invited to. Sophie's mocking cackle, "No more dragging us down, old soldier," echoed in my skull, sharper than the mortar blasts I'd survived in Afghanistan. I'd given them my Dartmouth bungalow, too, its cedar shingles weathered like my own scars. They lived there rent-free, sprawled across my life's work, while Sophie sneered at its outdated oak cabinets and creaky porch. "This place is like a bloody barracks," she'd scoffed last month, tossing her hair as she sipped my coffee, Tim Hortons, double-double, paid for by me. Nathan just scrolled his phone, his silence a blade of its own. I'd told myself it was just youth, that he'd come around. But now, stranded in the airport, I saw the truth. They didn't just take my money, they took my dignity, laughing as they left me behind. My hands shook as I hailed a taxi, the yellow cab pulling up with a screech. The driver, a wiry man with a salt and pepper beard, hopped out to grab my bag. His name tag read George Walsh Geo, as I'd known him in the Army. "Rough day, Bill?" Gio asked, his voice gravelly, eyes crinkling with a soldier's knowing look. He'd served in Bosnia, lost a finger to a landmine, and still drove this cab with a grin. I slid into the back seat, the leather creaking, the faint smell of pine air freshener mixing with my rage. "You could say that," I muttered, my voice low, like the rumble of a distant storm. "Family trouble?" "Family," I spat, the word bitter on my tongue. "Nathan and his wife left me high and dry, took my money, my vacation, and laughed about it." Gio's eyes met mine in the rearview mirror, his brow furrowing. "Hell, Bill, that's cold. My daughter pulled something like that once, sold my old service medals for weed money. Broke my damn heart." His words hit like a punch, stirring memories of Nathan at 19, promising to make me proud as I handed him the keys to that pickup. I'd worked overtime at the Halifax dockyards, my back screaming, to cover his tuition. And Sophie? Her wedding dress cost me 3 months' pension, yet she barely glanced at me at the reception, whispering to Nathan about my tacky suit. The taxi hummed along the Bedford Highway, the Halifax skyline fading into a gray smear against the drizzle. Rain streaked the windows, blurring the world outside, but not the pain inside. "You ever feel like you gave too much, Gio?" I asked, my voice raw, barely above a whisper. He chuckled, a sound rough as gravel. "All the time, brother. You give 'cause you love. Doesn't always come back the way you hope." His words sank in, heavy as the duffel in the trunk. I thought of the nights I'd stayed up, planning that trip to Prince Edward Island, red sand beaches, lobster dinners, a chance to see Nathan smile like he did as a kid. Instead, they'd turned my dream into their playground, mocking me as they boarded the plane. My fingers curled around the house keys in my pocket, their cold metal grounding me. The Dartmouth bungalow, my fortress, was all I had left. Sophie's voice rang in my head, her disdain for its dingy walls like a slap. Nathan's indifference was worse. His calls had dwindled to demands for cash, his visits to quick grabs for my checkbook. I'd fought for my country, lost brothers in the desert, carried shrapnel in my bones. And for what? To be a bank for my son's greed? My chest tightened, rage and grief colliding like a storm over the Atlantic. Gio glanced back, his eyes soft but sharp. "You're a fighter, Bill. Always were. What's your next move?" I stared out the window, the rain-slicked streets of Dartmouth coming into view. The keys bit into my palm, a promise of something new. "They think I'm done," I said, my voice hardening, each word a vow. "But I'm not. They'll see what happens when you cross a Fraser." The taxi slowed, my bungalow looming ahead, its sagging porch a testament to my battles. I wasn't the broken soldier they thought. I was William Fraser, and this war was just beginning. The Dartmouth bungalow's silence swallowed me as I stepped inside, the door creaking shut like a coffin lid. The taxi's rumble faded down the street, leaving only the faint drip of rain on the cedar shingles. My boots scuffed the hardwood, each step echoing in the empty house I'd built with my own hands. Hands that once held rifles in Afghanistan, now trembling with a pain sharper than any bullet. The living room was dim, lit only by a single lamp casting long shadows across the wall. My army duffel thudded to the floor, a relic of battles fought and lost, much like my heart. Nathan's betrayal, his cold voice on the phone, "Dad, we're on the plane. You're not coming." And Sophie's cruel cackle clawed at my soul, a wound that bled deeper with every heartbeat. I sank into the worn armchair, its springs groaning under my weight. On the mantel, my Valor Medal gleamed faintly, awarded for dragging a wounded comrade through Kandahar's dust under fire. Beside it, a faded photo of my squad brothers who never came home stared back, their eyes accusing. Had I survived those deserts just to be discarded by my own son? My gaze drifted to a wooden box on the coffee table, its lid carved with a maple leaf. Inside, I kept Nathan's childhood treasures: a hockey puck from his first goal, a clumsy Father's Day card scrawled with, "You're my hero, Dad." I opened it, my fingers brushing the yellowed paper, his boyish handwriting blurring as tears welled. "Hero," I whispered, my voice cracking. Was I ever that to him, or just a bottomless bank account? Memories flooded in, each one a knife. Nathan at 10, his grin wide as we fished off Peggy's Cove, the salty Atlantic breeze tangling his hair. I'd worked double shifts at the Halifax dockyards, my back screaming from old shrapnel wounds, to buy him that first stick. At 19, he'd hugged me tight when I handed him the keys to a used pickup, my pension stretched thin to cover it. "I'll make you proud, Dad," he'd said, his eyes bright. Lies. Now, he and Sophie lived in this house, my sanctuary, without a cent of rent, while she mocked its dingy walls and he ignored my calls unless he needed cash for their lavish life. 5,000 loonies for their Prince Edward Island trip, my dream of a family reunited wasted on their greed. My chest heaved, the pain so raw it felt like my ribs would crack. I clutched the card, tears spilling onto the ink, smudging the word hero. Had I been too soft, giving everything to a son who'd traded my love for Sophie's sneers? The medal mocked me from the mantel, a reminder of a soldier who'd faced death but couldn't face his own son's betrayal. "What am I worth?" I rasped, my voice barely audible over the rain's soft patter. A father? A soldier? Or just a fool who'd poured his life into a family that spat in his face? The silence pressed harder, the house's emptiness mirroring the void in my heart. I stood, my knees protesting, and crossed to the mantel. My fingers traced the photo of my squad, their faces frozen in time. "You'd have my back, brothers," I muttered, a bitter chuckle escaping. "Not like Nathan." The card slipped from my hand, fluttering to the floor like a broken promise. I thought of Sophie's voice, her disdain like acid. "No more dragging us down, old soldier." My jaw clenched, the grief twisting into something harder, sharper. They thought they could bury me, leave me to rot in their shadow. But I was William Fraser, forged in war's fire, not some broken relic to be tossed aside. My hand closed around the house keys, their cold metal a lifeline. This wasn't the end. It was the start of their reckoning. The Dartmouth bungalow's silence was a battlefield, the air thick with the musty scent of old wood and the faint tang of rain seeping through the window frames. My tears had dried. The Father's Day card from Nathan now a crumpled relic on the floor, its promise of hero mocked by his betrayal. My valor medal gleamed on the mantel, a silent witness to the war I'd fought for my country and the one I now waged for my dignity. Nathan and Sophie thought they could strip me bare, leave me bleeding in the Halifax airport with their cruel laughter. "No more dragging us down, old soldier." But I was William Fraser, forged in Kandahar's fire, and I wasn't done fighting. I stood, my shrapnel-scarred knees creaking, and crossed to the kitchen. The old rotary phone sat on the counter, its black plastic cold under my fingers. I dialed the bank, each beep a step toward reclaiming my life. "Scotiabank. This is Linda," a calm voice answered. "Linda, it's William Fraser," I said, my voice steady as a rifle's aim. "I need to revoke access to my account for Nathan Campbell and Sophie LeBlanc. Effective now." A pause, then the clack of her keyboard. "Can you confirm the last 4 digits of the account, sir?" I rattled them off, my eyes fixed on the house keys glinting beside a stack of bills. "Permanent removal," I added, the words cutting like a bayonet. "They don't touch my money again." Linda's tone softened. "I understand, Mr. Fraser. It's done. They're off the account." I hung up, a strange calm settling over me. In my mind's eye, I saw Nathan and Sophie in Prince Edward Island, their smug faces crumpling at a waterfront restaurant. The waiter, polite but firm, slides their card back across the linen tablecloth. "I'm sorry, it's declined," he says. Nathan's jaw tightens, his fingers drumming on the table. "Run it again," he snaps, his voice edged with panic. Sophie's eyes narrow, her manicured nails digging into her napkin. "What did you do, Nathan?" she hisses, her voice low to hide their shame. The second attempt fails, and Nathan's phone lights up with my number, his calls unanswered. They're stranded, their lavish getaway crumbling, just as they'd left me stranded. Back in the bungalow, I moved with purpose, my boots thumping on the hardwood. I grabbed a stack of cardboard boxes from the garage, their edges rough against my palms. Nathan and Sophie's bedroom was a mess of their greed designer clothes strewn across the bed, a smartwatch Nathan had begged me to buy last Christmas. I folded Sophie's silk dresses, each one a stab at my pension, and packed Nathan's gadgets, their screens smudged with his careless fingerprints. Every item was a reminder of my sacrifices, 5,000 loonies for their trip, countless hours at the dockyards to keep them comfortable. I sealed the boxes, my hand steady, and scrawled a note on a card. "You don't live here anymore. Take your things and go." I hauled the boxes to the front yard, the rain soaking through my jacket, the cardboard sagging under the Dartmouth drizzle. A familiar figure appeared through the mist, Ellen Murphy, my neighbor, her gray curls tucked under a knit cap. Ellie, a former army nurse who'd patched up soldiers in Bosnia, had a way of seeing through my armor. "Bill, what's all this?" she asked, eyeing the boxes, her voice warm but sharp with concern. "Cleaning house," I said, my tone hard as granite. Nathan and Sophie crossed me. I'm done being their bank. Ellie's eyes softened, but her nod was firm. "You're a soldier, Bill. You fought worse than this. Don't let them steal your pride." Her words hit like a lifeline, pulling me from the edge of doubt. I glanced at the boxes, their soggy edges a testament to my resolve. "They won't," I said, my voice low, each word a vow. The rain fell harder, but I stood taller, the keys in my pocket a cold, solid promise. Nathan and Sophie would feel the weight of their betrayal, and this was only the beginning. The Dartmouth bungalow stood defiant under the February drizzle, its cedar shingles slick with rain, a fortress reclaimed by my resolve. The cardboard boxes of Nathan and Sophie's belongings sagged in the front yard, their soggy edges a silent testament to my first strike. The house keys in my pocket pressed against my thigh, their cold metal a reminder of the line I'd drawn. My valor medal gleamed on the mantel inside, no longer a symbol of past pain but a beacon of my fight to take back my life. Nathan's betrayal, his voice slicing through the phone at Halifax airport, "Dad, we're on the plane. You're not coming." And Sophie's venomous cackle had carved a wound I'd turned into steel. I was William Fraser, a 62-year-old veteran, and I'd survived worse than their greed. Headlights cut through the mist, tires crunching on the gravel drive. My pulse quickened, but I stood at the living room window, the curtains rough against my fingers. A taxi door slammed, and Nathan stumbled out, his shirt rumpled, hair matted from the flight back from Prince Edward Island. Sophie followed, clutching her designer purse, her heels clicking on the wet pavement. They looked smaller, diminished under the street lamp's harsh glow, their arrogance stripped by my actions. Nathan fumbled with his key at the front door, twisting it uselessly against the new lock. "What the hell?" he muttered, his voice carrying through the glass. Sophie shoved past him, her face twisted. "Do it right, Nathan," she snapped. "It's not working." He barked back, slamming his shoulder into the door. I stayed still, my breath steady, watching their panic unfold. Nathan pounded the door, his fists hammering like artillery. "Dad, open this bloody door!" he shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. Sophie's eyes darted to the yard, spotting the boxes. She froze, then stormed over, her heels sinking into the muddy grass. "What's this?" she hissed, ripping open a box. Her silk dresses spilled out, rain, soaked and ruined. Nathan joined her, yanking out his smartwatch, its screen glinting dully. "He packed our stuff," he said, his voice hollow, disbelieving. Sophie snatched my note from the box, her hands trembling as she read, "You don't live here anymore. Take your things and go." Her lips curled into a snarl. "That bastard," she spat, tearing the note in half, the pieces fluttering to the ground. Nathan spun back to the door, his face red with rage. "You think you can throw us out, Dad? You're a coward," he roared, kicking the wood, the thud echoing in the quiet night. Sophie pounded beside him, her knocks sharp and frantic. "William, you pathetic old man, open this door," she shrieked, her voice laced with venom. My chest burned, not with pain but with a soldier's clarity. I stepped to the door, my hand on the knob, and opened it just enough to face them. Their eyes widened, Nathan's fists still raised, Sophie's face a mask of shock. "You don't get to call me names anymore," I said, my voice low and unyielding like a rifle's click before a shot. "You took my money, my home, my trust, and you sold my brother's watch." Nathan's face paled, his mouth opening but no words coming. Sophie's eyes flicked to him, her voice a hiss. "You told me you'd handled that." Nathan swallowed hard, his bravado crumbling. "Dad, I needed the cash. It was just an old watch." My blood boiled, the memory of that watch engraved with my fallen squad mate's initials, a gift from his dying breath searing my mind. "Just a watch?" I growled, stepping forward, my frame filling the doorway. "That was my brother's life, you spineless leech. You're not my son anymore. Get off my property." Sophie lunged forward, her voice syrupy with false remorse. "Bill, please. We're sorry. Let's talk." I cut her off, my gaze cold as the Atlantic. "Save your lies. You're done here." I slammed the door, the lock clicking with finality. Their shouts faded, muffled by the rain's steady drum. My heart pounded, but not with fear, with victory. The keys in my hand gleamed. A promise kept. Nathan and Sophie could rage all they wanted. This was my home, and I'd just taken it back. The Dartmouth bungalow stood resolute under the fading February drizzle, its cedar shingles glistening like a shield polished by my resolve. The front yard, once cluttered with Nathan and Sophie's rain-soaked boxes, now lay empty, their belongings hauled away in defeat. The house keys in my pocket, their edges worn smooth from years of use, felt heavier, a symbol of a home reclaimed, a life taken back. Nathan's betrayal at Halifax airport, his cold words, "Dad, we're on the plane. You're not coming." And Sophie's venomous cackle had been silenced by my stand at the door, my voice cutting through their rage. "You're not my son anymore." The memory of Nathan's pale face and Sophie's failed manipulation burned in my mind, not with pain but with a soldier's quiet triumph. I was William Fraser, a 62-year-old veteran, and I'd fought my way out of their shadow. I crossed to the kitchen, the hardwood creaking under my boots, and flicked on the kettle. The air filled with the warm scent of chamomile tea, a stark contrast to the storm that had raged outside. My Valor medal, restored to its rightful place on the mantel, caught the lamplight, its shine no longer mocking but affirming. The living room, once heavy with memories of Nathan's childhood promises, now felt lighter, as if the walls themselves exhaled. I'd packed away their greed, locked them out, and reclaimed my sanctuary. The phone on the counter buzzed, Nathan's name flashing again. Another voicemail, his voice likely pleading or accusing. but I let it hum unanswered. Their words had no power here anymore. Footsteps crunched on the gravel drive, and I peered through the window. Ellen Murphy, my neighbor and former army nurse, stood on the porch, her knit cap dusted with mist. Ellie, who'd patched up soldiers in Bosnia, had a knack for cutting through my defenses. I opened the door, the cold air rushing in. "Bill, you look like a man who's won a war," she said, her eyes twinkling despite the lines etched by years of service. "Just cleaning up the battlefield," I replied, my voice steady but warm, inviting her inside. She settled at the kitchen table, her hands wrapping around a steaming mug of tea. The kettle's whistle faded, leaving a comfortable quiet, broken only by the soft tick of the clock. "You did it, didn't you?" Ellie asked, her tone half question, half praise. "Kicked Nathan and Sophie to the curb?" I nodded, leaning against the counter, the keys clinking in my pocket. "They thought they could bleed me dry, my pension, my home, my brother's watch. I showed them they were wrong." Ellie's lips curved into a knowing smile. "I had a cousin like that once," she said, sipping her tea. "Thought he could swindle me out of my savings after my husband passed. I cut him off, just like you. Felt like shedding a skin." Her words landed like a comrade's salute, grounding me in the rightness of my choice. I thought of Nathan and Sophie now, likely huddled in some cheap Dartmouth motel, their designer bags sagging on a creaky bed. The image didn't spark pity, only clarity. They'd built their lives on my sacrifices, 10,000 loonies for Nathan's degree, countless hours at the Halifax dockyards to fund their whims. Now, stripped of my support, they were floundering, their arrogance drowned in the rain. "They'll survive," I said, my voice low, almost to myself, "but not on my dime." Ellie raised her mug, her eyes sharp. "To new battles, Bill, the ones you fight for yourself." I clinked my mug against hers, the ceramic ringing softly, a toast to my freedom. The kitchen glowed, the lamplight casting a warm halo over the table. Outside, the drizzle had stopped, leaving the Dartmouth night still, the stars piercing the clouds. My bungalow, with its weathered shingles and creaky floors, was no longer a cage of memories but a fortress of my own making. I'd lost a son, but I'd gained something greater myself. The keys in my pocket, the medal on the mantel, the tea in my hand, they were mine, earned through battles both in war and at home. Nathan and Sophie were gone, and I was still standing, ready for whatever came next. The Dartmouth bungalow's kitchen glowed under the soft lamplight, the air rich with the soothing scent of chamomile tea, a quiet haven after the storm of betrayal. The cedar shingles outside, still damp from the February drizzle, stood as a testament to my reclaimed fortress, no longer burdened by Nathan and Sophie's greed. Their rain-soaked boxes were gone, their voices silenced, their final pleas Nathan's desperate shouts, Sophie's venomous shrieks locked out with the new keys in my pocket. The Valor Medal on the mantel shone proudly, its gleam a reminder of battles won, from Afghanistan's deserts to this hearth I'd fought to reclaim. I was William Fraser, a 62-year-old veteran, and I'd carved a path through pain to stand whole again. Ellen Murphy sat across the kitchen table, her mug cradled in hands that had once stitched soldiers' wounds in Bosnia. Ellie, with her gray curls and sharp eyes, was more than a neighbor. She was a comrade who understood the scars we carried, seen and unseen. The clock ticked softly, its rhythm steady like a soldier's march. "You've come a long way, Bill," Ellie said, her voice warm but laced with the steel of someone who'd faced her own wars. "Not many would have had the guts to do what you did." I leaned back, the chair creaking under me, and let her words settle. Nathan's betrayal at Halifax airport, his cold dismissal, "Dad, we're on the plane, you're not coming," had nearly broken me. Sophie's cackle, her cruel jab about the old soldier, had poured salt into the wound. But I'd fought back, cutting their bank access, packing their lives into boxes, and facing them down at my doorstep. I learned something through this, Ellie, I said, my voice low, each word heavy with hard-earned truth. As a soldier, I fought for my country, carried my brothers through hell. As a father, I gave Nathan everything 10,000 loonies for his degree, my pension for his dreams, even my brother's watch, which he sold for pocket change. But the hardest fight was for my own dignity. Ellie nodded, her eyes meeting mine, a silent acknowledgement of battles we both knew. "You don't owe anyone your scars, Bill," she said, her tone firm. "Not your son, not his wife, not the world. You live for the fights that make you whole." Her words struck deep, like a flare lighting up the dark. I thought of the years I'd spent pouring my life into Nathan, believing my sacrifices would bind us. I'd worked grueling shifts at the Halifax dockyards, my shrapnel-scarred knees aching, to fund his pickup truck, his wedding, his carefree life in my Dartmouth home. Sophie's sneers about its outdated walls had stung, but Nathan silenced his indifference as he took cut deeper. I'd nearly lost myself, questioning my worth in the shadow of their greed. But standing up, locking them out, I'd found a truth forged in pain. My value wasn't in what I gave others, but in what I claimed for myself. "To my fellow veterans," I said, my voice rising, steady as a parade call, "you fought enough for others on battlefields, at home, in your hearts. Don't let anyone steal your pride. Your scars are yours, earned in blood and sweat. Stand tall like you did in uniform and fight for your peace." Ellie raised her mug, a glint of pride in her eyes. "Damn right, Bill," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You're a fighter, and you've shown 'em how it's done." We clinked mugs, the ceramic ringing like a bell, sealing the lesson in the quiet of my reclaimed home. The kitchen's warmth wrapped around me, the lamplight casting long shadows that no longer held ghosts. Outside, the Dartmouth night was still, the stars bright above the Atlantic's whisper. My bungalow, with its creaky floors and weathered heart, was mine again, not a prison of broken promises, but a sanctuary of strength. Nathan and Sophie were out there, scrambling in their defeat, but they couldn't touch me now. I'd lost a son, but I'd gained a life, one I'd fight for every day. The keys in my pocket, the medals shine, Ellie's steady presence, they were my anchors, proof that William Fraser was whole, unbowed, and ready to face tomorrow. The Dartmouth bungalow's kitchen glowed softly, the chamomile tea's warmth lingering in the air, a quiet sanctuary after the storm of betrayal. Outside, the February night draped Halifax in stillness, the stars glinting like distant metals above the Atlantic's whisper. My Valor Medal rested on the mantel, its shine a steady reminder of battles won not just in Afghanistan, but here, in this home I'd reclaimed. Nathan and Sophie's voices, once sharp with greed, were now echoes, drowned out by my resolve. I was William Fraser, a 62-year-old veteran, and I'd fought to stand tall again. Ellen Murphy's words still rang in my ears. "You don't owe anyone your scars. That truth, forged in pain, was my gift to you, my fellow veterans, my brothers and sisters who've carried heavy loads. This house, these keys, this life, they're mine again. But the fight isn't just mine, it's yours too. If my story struck a chord, if it reminded you of your own battles for dignity, I ask you to share it. Hit that like button on this video. Not for me, but for every veteran who stood up when the world tried to knock them down. Drop a comment below, tell me about the fights you've won, the scars you've turned into strength. Your stories matter, just as mine does. And if you want more tales of grit and heart, subscribe to Maple Revenge. Join us, here in the Maritimes and beyond, as we honor the battles that make us whole. Let's keep telling these stories together.